Greetings from the West Bridgewater Public Library. I'm Ellen Snowenbus, the library director, and we are now coming to the end of our Thoreau summer. We've had lots of activities related to Henry David Thoreau's bicentennial, and one of the really exciting ones that we are very proud of is our essay contest for teens, in which they found ways to connect the work and life of Henry David Thoreau with their lives. And so we're very grateful to the Mansfield Bank for giving us the funds to provide actual prize money, and the Friends of the Library who provided a conduit for that to happen. And our three winners are Pierce Sutcliffe for third place winner, and Laura Ojibana, the second place winner, and Tim Churchill won the grand first place prize. So I'm very happy to announce that these three young people are going to be reading their essays to you and enjoying that experience of hearing young people really speak from the heart. So congratulations to all of you. First to read his essay will be Pierce Sutcliffe. Welcome, Pierce.
Henry David Thoreau was a philosopher. Born in 1817, he produced many writings in his only 45-year life, including Civil Disobedience and Economy. All of his writings have been both praised and ridiculed, but do the ideas in these passages, written in an olden age, still have relevance today? In Civil Disobedience, Thoreau conveys that he believes that the government that governs the least is the best, and that governments must keep order but must never intrude too far into the private affairs of the people. Thoreau also writes of how many people in the nation are doomed to labor to support the middle and upper classes, while others who fall into the same category serve the nation with their minds and mouths, while having no ambitions of their own. The mass of men serve the state thus, not as men mainly, but as machines with their bodies. They are the standing army and the militia, jailers, constables, pons comitatus, etc. In most cases, there is no free exercise whatever of the judgment or of the moral sense, but they put themselves on a level with wood and earth and stones. Wooden men can perhaps be manufactured that will serve the purpose as well. Such command no more respect than men of straw or a lump of dirt. They have the same worth of only horses and dogs. In many essays, Thoreau was likely talking about the infringement of rights on both slaves and people living in poverty. Although in our modern world we have banished the vile acts of slavery, one can still draw parallels between the forced laborers of Thoreau's age and the masses of underpaid workers in today's world. While the slaves of 1800 were not paid at all, many people today work for ludicrously low amounts of money that can be as dissatisfying as not being paid at all. Thoreau often wrote about the voting system and its many problems. Of course, Thoreau was writing in the earlier days of the United States of America, but many of his ideas about voting and the voting system are still relevant in today's politics. In modern politics, as in early politics, there are and were many glitches, kinks, and loopholes that politicians and lawmakers have historically exploited to twist or devalue the votes of the people. Thoreau wrote about these problems in his Civil Disobedience. I hear of a convention to be held at Baltimore or elsewhere for the selection of a candidate for the presidency, made up chiefly of editors and men who are politicians by profession. But I think, what is it to any independent, intelligent, and respectable man what decision they may come to? Shall we not have the advantage of his wisdom and honesty nevertheless? Can we not count upon some independent votes? Of course, the election systems of 1800 were different than those that stand today, but unfair political strategies such as gerrymandering, drawing state voting lines to benefit the vote of one party and distort and reduce the other votes, still exist and cause problems today. In his writings, Thoreau discusses when it should be okay to deny the government and when the denial of some becomes the burden of most. Thoreau once refused to pay a tax that would provide a church with funds that could have been allocated towards the school. For this, he was put into prison for one night. He later removed himself from that church's taxing list. In today's world, laws prevent taxpayer funds from going to parochial organizations, but people must still pay taxes, even if they don't agree with what they're funding. Thoreau ponders about democracy and how taxes work. He asks, might a person be free to choose what he or she funds? On one hand, perhaps it would make more sense if people had a true democracy, even in their systems of paying taxes. But in the governmental system, it only makes sense that people would have to pay all the taxes, otherwise everything falls apart. Thoreau had many ideas. Some are still valuable today. Others, like the previous one, are not. Thank you.
And next we will hear from Laura Ojibana, who is our second prize winner.
Looking back, Thoreau is relevant today because his philosophy is something a close friend of mine lives by. Ever since I was 8, I attended an overnight camp in Maine. It lasted only 10 days, and young girls from the New England area were brought here to experience life away from the city. The first time I left for Maine, I was extremely excited. Growing up in Boston, I had always been surrounded by the same people, so I thought of leaving home as a fun, new experience. When I arrived at camp, I checked in and was led to where I'd be staying for the next 10 days. Because I was one of the last people to arrive, I saw that I had an interesting group of characters in my cabin. Nonetheless, we all got along rather quickly and spent most of our time around each other. One girl in particular, Stephanie, was a close friend of mine. She was from New York, someone who came from the city like me, although she did not share my passion in camping. Instead of participating in camp activities, Stephanie would only watch the campers having fun without her. I did not want her to spend the rest of her time at camp just watching, but with all my attempts to make her feel inclusive, Stephanie always refused. It was not until the night of our camping trip that I saw a change in Stephanie's attitude. The camping trip was an overnight activity that was required for every cabin to take part in. The girls would pack the items that they needed and hike to an off campground for the night. Needless to say, Stephanie was not happy about the trip, but I tried my best to make the most of it for her. We arrived at the campsite late in the afternoon, and our counselors allowed us some time to settle in before dinner, so we played a game of tag. Again, Stephanie did not want to participate in our game, but when I became the tagger, I immediately thought to tag Stephanie. When I tagged her, like always, Stephanie refused to play the game, and I became very frustrated with her. I guess she was homesick, but there was nothing to lose from playing a game of tag. It was not even a camp activity. When dinner came around, Stephanie sat next to me, but I didn't want to be anywhere near her, so I moved. Throughout the duration of dinner, Stephanie sat by herself. I think that was when she realized how lonely she felt all by herself. Now that her closest friend was avoiding her, she had no one else to feel comfortable around. After cleaning up, we were all sent to bed, and later that night, I heard someone whispering my name. When I came to, I saw that Stephanie was hovering over me. Since it was dark out, she wanted me to follow her so that she can use the bathroom in the woods. We walked in silence on our way there, but when she finished, I prepared to go back until I felt a tap on my shoulder. "Tag, you're it." Confused, I turned around, only to see that Stephanie had run off somewhere into the woods. I don't remember much afterwards, but at one point, all the campers were up and about playing tag in the middle of the night. We ended up being scolded by our counselors, but I truly believe Stephanie enjoyed herself that night, and gradually throughout camp, she had started to participate in camp activities. All in all, Thoreau's legacy is still relevant today because he wished to live deliberately, to find only the essential facts of life, and see if I could learn what it had to teach, and not when I came to die, discovered that I had not lived. In other words, an essential part of Thoreau's philosophy was that a person dies long before their bodies do. He encouraged individuals to sought out truth through nature, rather than spend life never truly living to their fullest potential. Overall, if Stephanie continued to observe, opposed to taking part in activities, I fear that she would never enjoy camp, similar to how Thoreau opposed this notion.
And now we will hear from the first prize winner, Tim Churchill.
What word would you use to describe modern technology? Complex, impressive, amazing, breathtaking, crucial, massive, addictive, destructive. All of these words represent someone's opinion, and each one of them are correct in their own ways. However, no one alive today would disagree that modern technology has shaped and changed the world we live in today. Many would say that it owns us and completely controls our lives and decisions. There are many historical figures who are dedicated to preventing this crisis by reintroducing us to nature. One of these was Henry David Thoreau. Thoreau's most well-known accomplishment was his 2-year stay at Walden Pond, which sparked the concept for his literary masterpiece, Walden. Thoreau's reasoning behind his self-induced isolation was his status as a transcendentalist. The concept of self-reliance was crucial to the transcendentalists. In many ways, that idea was the core of that way of thinking. Thoreau and all of the transcendentalists transcendentalists believed that nature is pure and society poisons that purity. Therefore, self-reliance was the catalyst for Walden. Although in the present day transcendentalism is dead, that does not mean that their beliefs are unnecessary or forgotten. I believe the transcendentalists' ideals did not just fade away, but melted into the world and is still alive, but in a very different form. The world is still affected by Thoreau's actions and beliefs, and they are more important now than ever. Technology has built a barrier between us and nature. Now, I don't believe that technology is evil or that it corrupts entirely, but I do believe that it can become addictive and gain an unwelcome role in our lives. When technology is used properly, it can be a very helpful tool that makes our lives easier. But there is a very fine line between assistance in life and control in life. What begins as something used sparingly becomes something you use hours every single day. The average person cannot even spend more than 20 minutes without his or her mobile phone. Just in the past 50 years, technology has skyrocketed. And that's not something to be afraid of as long as you're responsible with it. However, the world has not been responsible with modern technology, and nature may be the only cure for that irresponsibility. Thoreau's greatest fear has arrived: technological domination. Everywhere you look, technology permeates society. Therefore, we have become the society that the transcendentalists despised. Although we attempt to aid and preserve nature, the general population still does not recognize the majestic splendor of the outdoors. I blame modern technology for this entirely. Without all those bright and colorful distractions tearing us away from nature, the world would be an indescribably different place. Thoreau and all of the transcendentalists' writings are the key to reversing this horror. Although the place technology has taken in the world can never be erased, I deeply believe that though the transcendentalists and their ideas, we can gain a deeper understanding and respect for nature. From the lush green plant life of the forests to the sandy heat of the deserts, from kayaking on a glittering lake to playing a card game with friends surrounded by falling leaves, nature is a beautiful thing that society is rejecting every single day. All of the vivid colors, the peaceful sounds, the calming scents are being completely ignored. The fact that we are being possessed by a screen is bad enough, without us leaving nature to decay while we live in ignorance. Although I disagree with Thoreau on his belief that nature is sacred, I do believe that nature is a breathtaking thing filled with wonderful marvels that the majority of society is not open to. And sadly, I believe that a large fraction of the world will never appreciate the glory of the outdoors. Because of this, I do all I can to feel nature's presence every day. And through this, my life has been changed forever. In closing, the transcendentalists had a vision that no one else possessed. Society has torn us away from nature and blocked us from fully understanding its grandeur. The impact that technology has had on our world can never be undone, but with historical figures such as Thoreau to guide us, we can rediscover a place for nature in our lives. Although it will be difficult to reintroduce nature to the world, I know that it will be more than worthwhile in the end.
As you can see, there are many ways to interpret Thoreau in today's times. Pierce really dwelled on the relationship of the individual to society, the individual to the government. Laura really focused on living life to the fullest in the moment you have. And Tim focused on the relationship of the individual to technology and the individual to nature. All of these are important threads that run deeply through Thoreau's writings. And so we're very grateful for them to have written such personal and interesting stories. Now, next summer, we have a new challenge that we want to let people know about. The challenge will be to write an essay, no more than 750 words, based on This I Believe, which is actually an essay movement of which there are some books written, so you can look them up if you want. But they're basically essays that just focus on some basic belief that you as an individual have and want to share in written form. So we look forward to next summer, and thank you all for all of your wonderful work on our Thoreau Bicentennial Summer at the West Bridgewater Public Library.